On this episode of Locked On Angels, last week, John and I played GM. Today, it's your turn. So we're sharing your strategies and your moves and your ideas to make the Halos a contender in 2025. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to John and I, the Super Halo Bros, for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, join the 8,000 subscribers on YouTube and become a Locked On Everydayer. John, we started with 800 and now we're at 8,000. Love this Everydayer fam. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by Gametime. You can download their app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase.
Happy Monday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the First Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, first things first, happy Veterans Day to those who have served our country. We are deeply appreciative of everything that you've done and continue to do, so happy Veterans Day to you. Hey, we're here 5 days a week talking Angels baseball, Monday through Friday, every single weekday until about mid-December. We'll go down to about 3 episodes. But until then, you've got us 5 days a week talking about your favorite team, my favorite team, Mike's favorite team, whether that's fortunately or unfortunately in terms of favorite teams. But there's a lot to cover. This week on Locked On Angels, we have a lot to cover. A lot happened over the weekend. We're going to talk about it throughout the week. And we're going to chat about Roki Sasaki and the possibility of him wearing Halo Red this season. Zach Neto is hurt and had shoulder surgery. How's that going to impact the Halos on opening day? And we did a deep dive into the Kyle Hendricks signing, trying to convince ourselves that it was a good move.
Yes.
And we'll share what we found. But on today's show, you're the GM. Remember, we had GM week last week, and we had to put that off by 1 day because of the fact that Kyle Hendricks was signed. But we got everydayers in on the action, Mike, here in terms of playing GM. So let's get to Scott Freeman, an everydayer who comments often on YouTube and leaves us voicemails. He really went at the GM assignment, didn't he?
Yeah, Scott, you get the whole first segment, bro, because you had some really good thoughts and we wanted to respond to all of it. First, he said, this is fun. And it is. It's actually fun to play make-believe GM, and it's not your money and it's not your team, so you can kind of do whatever. But he stayed within the parameters that you and I stayed within. He did see some discrepancies from market value projections on Spot Track to some of the things that we talked about. So we'll bring some clarity there. But he said, I've got a ton of wiggle room in my projected salaries, so can easily cover the difference if needed. And he said he did this before my GM show. John, he did borrow 2 players from your show, Hassan Kim and Travis d'Arnaud. And he said he also likes the Sasaki move. He, by the way, called that brilliant when I mentioned that. So thank you, Scott. Estimated payroll in 2025, he's using the same numbers we used, 168.3 million. The luxury tax payroll in 2025, 183.6. And the first luxury tax threshold is 241 million. So there's about 57.3 million available before the first luxury tax. John, why don't you get us started with Scott's first free agent signing, which I agree with. I like this signing. So why don't you share that with us?
Yeah. So real quick, I want to mention too that between Spot Track and FanGraphs and their roster resource, I have found over the last few years that FanGraphs / roster resource is a little bit more accurate in terms of the real numbers that are happening right now. So if anybody's interested in looking up stuff, Spot Track's great because you can see the contracts in front of you, but FanGraphs roster resource is great because it gives you a good idea of where all the money's going for these teams each season. All right, free agents. Jack Flaherty, 5 years, $20.2 million. That's $101 million per Spot Track. He said, you guys said $23 million a year. Mike was at $23 million.
Yeah.
Hey, can't go wrong with Jack Flaherty. I think that'd be a great move. Yusei Kikuchi, 2 years for $14.9 million a year, which is great because the Angels could use a second starter in addition to Jack Flaherty. But then also Matthew Boyd, 2 years across those 2 years, $6.4 million in total. Mike, you said $10 million. I think, hey, why not pay these guys well? Give them some incentive to come to Anaheim. And then Hae-Sung Kim, not Ha-Sung, but Hae-Sung, who's coming over from the KBO. Scott wanted to give him 3 years at $8 million apiece, $24 million. Roki Sasaki, obviously the first year is going to be league minimum, but it's all about that international bonus pool money and how much of the money the Angels want to spend to lure Roki Sasaki here. And then he added Travis d'Arnaud, like I did, 1 year, $2 million. So that way you have a backup catcher to Logan O'Hoppe. All that adds up to about $49.04 million. And then Mike, Scott had some trades as well. Let's talk.
Yeah, he said he would trade Taylor Ward for Kyle Hurt, who is on the Dodgers, a $9 million deal. And so Mookie is moving to second base, is all indications he'll be back into the infield. And he said the Dodgers are going to need some short-term outfield help while continuing to groom the young guys. And why not let Taylor Ward be that guy? Then he also said that he would trade Robert Stevenson for Brett Beatty in the New York Mets. That's about a $10 million trade. He said Robert Stevenson, overhyped, not worth the cost. So that's an interesting thought. Would love your thoughts on that. He said Angels seem to be pretty good at finding relief pitchers, right-handed relief pitchers, finding the next Carlos Estevez. He said Beatty is a classic change of scenery guy. And then he said he would trade Tyler Anderson for anything that you can get. Of course, that's a $13 million contract. He said Anthony Rendon, anything you can get, or maybe eat the cost. You're probably not going to trade him. Here's what caught my eye, Johnny. GM Scott Freeman would trade Nelson Rada, Matt Thaiss, $1 million, Mickey Moniak, $2.65 million, and one of two pitchers, Aldeguerri or Clausen, for Luis Robert with the Chicago White Sox.
Okay.
He says his 2025 salary cleared via trade, $35 million, and salary added via trade, $15 million. John, what are your thoughts on those trades, but specifically the last couple of trades that I mentioned? First, the Taylor Ward for Kyle Hurt trade. What do you think about that one?
Kyle Hurt, I was just looking him up. So he got into 3 games with the Dodgers in 2024, 6 2/3 innings. He did start one and then pitched in relief, 1.35 ERA. I have to get into the numbers a little bit more to see what he's really effective at. But hey, can't help but want young pitching. This guy is 26 years old, so he's been around for a little bit. But hey, 2020 5th round selection for the Dodgers. The Marlins actually. So they actually got Kyle Hurt, and now he's with the Dodgers. Just looking that over, Mike. I feel like the Robert Stevenson for Brett Beatty move. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to have Brett Beatty.
Yeah.
But in terms of overhyped, not worth the cost for Robert Stevenson, we haven't seen him pitch yet. We haven't even seen him put on a uniform yet. And they got that extra year in his contract real cheap because of the injury that occurred. So I'm interested to see what happens there. And then Brett Beatty is, was supposed to be third baseman for the Mets. And then Mark Vientos took that over. Really what you're going to have to pay attention to, how does the whole Pete Alonso thing shake out for the Mets? Whether they keep him or not, it will. I guarantee you Mark Vientos will move to first base if they don't retain Pete Alonso or get another first baseman. They really want Vientos over at first base, which might open up the door for Beatty. I think Beatty's kind of the same situation, just not a lot of time to go around for him in the Mets organization. So I think a change of scenery there would be interesting. Tell me about this Luis Robert trade. That's a lot of players for 3 years of Luis Robert. I think I'm looking at here. Let me make sure I have that right.
Yeah. While you look that up, let me talk about this. So, first of all, I like the boldness of his GM moves. And if we're going to compete, then these are moves that are like, all right, let's get some good major league players on this roster. I really am hesitant to trade any one of Samuel Aldeguerri or George Clausen just because I think that there's a lot of potential there. I get that he would pick up Kyle Hurt, and maybe perhaps that would be an arm that would replace one of those guys. Moniak and Thaiss, I think, are very tradable pieces, and I don't disagree with that. I am not ready to part with a 19, 20-year-old Nelson Rada. I think that he is somebody that could potentially be a big-time player for us. But I do have some hesitation in the same breath, in the same vein, because sometimes Angel prospects can be so great and then they just fall apart when they reach the major league level. And so I think what Scott is doing here is trading them at their highest value and hoping that they don't end up becoming like these incredible pitchers.
Yeah.
But he's also trying to infuse this roster with some major league talent. So is that a trade, John? How many years do they get for Luis Robert?
They would get his 25, 26, and 27 seasons. So which where did those go? Let's see. Oh, here we go. There's some buyouts too. So there's a $20 million team option for 2026 and 2027, and a $2 million buyout if they wanted to bail on that. So next year he's owed $15 million, then $20 million after that, $20 million after that. He won't even be 30 by the end of this contract right now. So you would get 3 years of Luis Robert, ages 27, 28, and 29. So yeah,
that incentivize it. Yeah. Now, here's his roster. This is his projected opening day lineup. Logan O'Hoppe, Nolan Shawnoel at first, Kim at second, Neto at shortstop. Obviously, he's hurt, so they would have to move around. Rengifo and Beatty at third, Trout in left, Robert in center, Adele in right, and Soler as your DH. And then on the bench, you've got you obviously got your bench players that will be there. But let me move to the starting rotation. He would have Flaherty, Sasaki, which is a potential, Kikuchi, Soriano, Boyd, and Kahanowitz. I like that starting rotation with depth being Detmers, Kendricks, Dana, Hurt, and Aldeguerri.
Kendricks, as in Kyle Hendricks. We kept.
It says Kendricks.
we were calling him that all last week. Couldn't stop it. So
that's funny.
Interesting moves. I like this final set of moves here, Mike. New president of baseball operations, Kim Ing.
Yep.
Corner of the Kim market. New assistant GMs, Mike and John. Hey,
we're in.
And he said new assistant to the new GMs, me, Scott Freeman. So I love that. That's quite the front office right there. I think that we would do a great job putting our heads together. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, more GM moves, some rapid fire moves that you shared with us. We're going to get into everything that you suggested over the last few days, coming right up.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place your live bets on all sports, especially NFL, in one specific place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the live stats, the latest stats, the play-by-play, all on the same page where you place your bet so that you can be a smarter better. So visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins.
Did anybody have a hunch that Brock Birdie was going to drop a dime to George Kittle in the end zone yesterday? Let's go.
So good. Hopefully you didn't bet on Jake Moody. That guy needs to get it together. That's FanDuel.com. You can never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Mike, we're continuing our GM week. It's the last day of GM week, delayed a little bit. Of course, we had to get to the Kyle Hendricks news last week, and then we put off the Everydayers Play GM episode till today. So we're so happy for everybody who got involved. Let's get going with Dr. King Schultz on YouTube. Ha-Sung Kim and Tomoyuki Sugano are also guys I want on the team. Not sure about Sasaki, though. It's undecided if he's actually available. Well, turns out over the weekend, the news came in that he will be posted.
Yep.
So that's exciting. And then he had his picks with the same budget. I like this one right here, Mike. Kyle Higashioka, 2 years, $4 million each year. Need a veteran catcher who can help O'Hoppe improve in his role as a catcher. Probably won't be a great asset as a hitter, still better than Theis, though, but his presence should help O'Hoppe and the young pitching staff. John picks Travis d'Arnaud, fulfills a similar role, but I like Higashioka a bit more in that spot. And what's funny, Dr. King Schultz, is that I did consider Kyle Higashioka. So we're on the same wavelength here. I like that.
Yeah, and then his second pick was Andrew Kittredge.
Kittredge.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the Mission Impossible guy.
I was just going to say that.
He said 2 years, $7 million each. He said the bullpen was great last year, but bullpens are volatile. And so I love that there was a decision here to bring in a solid guy that can really help this team. He led the NL in holds last season, could be a reliable guy to bring out in the later innings before Joyce and maybe even Stevenson take the mound. So Andrew Kittredge, 2 years, $7 million.
Here's one that you and I both kind of bounced back and forth on while we were planning out our shows, and it's Nathan Eovaldi, 2 years for $23 million a year, which is about what he's going to go for. He said it's kind of a gamble because of his durability. He was injured the last 4 weeks, each of the last 3 seasons, but he has shown to be a great piece that gives you a lot of innings when he plays. We won't be competing in 2025, but he could be a solid anchor piece if we have a shot at competing in 2026. So yeah, interesting. Keep Nathan Eovaldi around for 2 years while your starting staff develops and grows. I like that move.
Yeah. Hassan Kim, 2 years, $13 million each year. He said he agrees with my decision about why we should get him, defense especially, but he also is somebody that can hit the gaps. He said what bothers him is that Kim probably wants to play shortstop on a new team. And of course, Zach Neto is there, but maybe Kim can play short while Zach Neto is trying to recover from his shoulder surgery. We'll get into that later this week. And then he said as a non-free agent move, he would extend Louis Rengifo, lock him up next 3 to 4 years and raise his salary for 2025 by $4 million. So total salary that he would spend, $51 million.
And I love the philosophy he shared. It was to get experienced and solid pieces on the team that can help solidify and improve our young core for a potential run in 2026. Don't waste draft picks with free agents with a qualifying offer. We can make big splashes next offseason with Vlad Jr., Framber Valdez, Dylan Cease being available. The goal for 2025 should be to get the trajectory going upwards and not pile drive further down like in the past. Appreciate the wrestling reference there as well.
Nathan Davis on Twitter had some suggestions. He loved your Spencer Turnbull decision and your Jacob Younis?
Jacob Younis.
Yeah. That's right. So Turnbull, he would give 2 years, $10 million each. So that's $5 million a year. And then Jacob Younis would get $2 and $9 million, which is $4.5 million a year. And I almost made this move as well. Gleyber Torres, 2 years, $8 million, $4 million a year. And then he said in a perfect world, Roki Sasaki, give him all of the international money.
Pay up. Gleyber Torres is interesting. The two for $8 million, $4 million over each year. I feel like Gleyber is going to, I don't know. There's going to be a market for him in this offseason.
I think so.
And I think people are going to overspend and overpay. Not that he's a bad player, but I think people are going to see the opportunity to have him and really put some money down to get him.
I won't be surprised if he does end up on the Angels. I won't be surprised if maybe they make a move and try to go get him because they've been talking about an infielder. They've been talking about getting somebody that can solidify that infield in a specific way. And so I think he might be one of the guys they would consider because of his cost and there's no qualifying offer connected to him.
Seems like he's one of those guys who could be set up for a bounce back year in terms of, hey, I need a prove it year. I need to go out and get a short-term deal and show everybody I still got it. Yeah. That might be something that happens with Torres. WF5831 on YouTube said, my GM moves in free agency. Ha-Sung Kim, 3 years, $25 million over that time. Yohan Moncada, 1 year, $4 million. Nathan Eovaldi, 2 years, $24 million. Shane Bieber, 2 years, $30 million. And Hunter Strickland bringing him back 1 year, $3 million. What do you say?
I like those moves. I mean, I think the Eovaldi move is a smart move. I know that he has had some injuries, and then the Moncada move is something you brought up on your show. You think it's a potential for a bounce back because you could get a pretty talented player who hasn't been super great, but for very cheap, and maybe be able to fix some things, correct some things, maybe in his swing and maybe in his head, because I think a lot of what he's been going through is he's on the White Sox and they're not good and it's not a great culture. So there might be some work there, right?
He's been so hurt over the last few years too, that he needs a full and healthy season. And so whoever picks him up is going to be banking on that for Moncada. German Dwarf Anthony said that he's signing some difference makers like I did.
Yep.
Blake Snell, 5 years between 155 and 165 million. Shinosuke Ogasawara. I don't know how to say that last name, but I know
good.
I know Shinosuke is how you say the first part. Ogasawara. There we go. That's
Yeah.
it. I just had to slow down a little bit. I tried to read faster than my lips move. 3 years, 39 millions. Needs to prove the translation and the transition over to MLB. Gio Urshela, 2 years, 8 to 10 million. Said needs to come back year. Good utility, first, third base, backup with contact. Then he picked his supplemental guys. Agreed with me on Travis d'Arnaud. He's bringing back Carlos Estevez for 2 years, 12 to 14 million. He's a good leader, makes us much deeper in the bullpen. And then he had some trades as well, right, Mike?
Yeah, he had what he would call a salary dump. Tyler Anderson, $5 million. They're going to eat that, plus Matt Thaiss or Stefanik for Red Sox prospect, a catcher, Kyle Teal, or Tyler Anderson and Nico Cavadas for Giants prospect, a catcher named Yohendry Sanchez. I've not heard of him before.
Yeah.
And then $2.5 million for Hendricks. The remaining money should be enough to cover implementing risks, waivers, 1-year deals that we're bound to see. What do you think of those trades, John?
I know this is going to hurt a lot of feelings, but Michael Stefanik elected free agency.
He did. He's not around anymore.
So, the Angels could bring him back on a minor league deal, but it seems like he probably will want an opportunity somewhere else.
Well, they don't like him. So
yeah, apparently. Yeah, the way they use him. Mike, Nico could be an interesting trade piece, that Tyler Anderson and Nico to the Giants for their catching prospect. Nico's really showing out in the Arizona Fall League right now.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe you give him a year to see what he does between the minor leagues and the majors. But it makes for an interesting trade piece for sure.
There is a guy, and everydayers might know who it is, but you should look him up, everydayers. His name is Pete Incaviglia. Pete Incaviglia played with the Phillies when they were in the World Series in the 90s, I think 93. And Incaviglia was the type of guy that wouldn't play all the time, but when he would play, he would hit bombs. He'd have a low average, maybe 230 average, but he would have 21, 25 home runs with like 50 RBIs. But when they put him in the lineup for 90 games or whatever he was playing, he ended up hitting bombs and he was a perfect bench piece. And I can see Nico Cavadas being that for the Angels or for whatever team they potentially might trade him to if they decide to trade him. He could be a guy that could be a big threat off the bench. I just don't know if that's going to be good for his swing and good for his mentality. He might need at bats like Mickey Moniak, but what I'm seeing in this offseason as he's playing in the Arizona Fall League, he's really impressed, and he's impressed in the outfield, but he is getting consistent at bats. I think he could be somebody that could rotate in as a DH, potentially maybe playing some outfield, maybe even some first base. So I think he could be a bigger piece than what we've seen so far, based upon if he can get his hit tool a bit more stronger, a bit better.
Contacting?
Make some more contact, right? Yeah. But he reminds me of a Pete Incaviglia on the team. He could come in and really hit a bomb or have a big hit for you and really be an impact player for you.
Yeah. And one thing I do appreciate is the fact that he was on the major league roster this year, and now he's in the Arizona Fall League, tearing it up. And so he's not above getting his reps in, getting some practice in, and trying to remain competitive over the offseason.
Locked On Angels is brought to you by Gametime. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money. So obsessed that I'm going to list a bunch of ways they can save you money. They can save you money on last-minute ticket deals in the app. You can save up to 60% on whatever you're going to see, whatever tickets you're buying, whether it's sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. They have exclusive in-app flash deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. They have zone deals where you choose the section. Gametime chooses the seats. They also have all-in pricing, so you are not surprised by how much things will cost or how cheap things will be because of Gametime. And they have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime's going to credit you 110% of the difference. And then their ticket coverage is incredible. It's the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, that they take care of you. Just know that with Gametime. So take all the guesswork out with Gametime. You can download their app right now. Use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's LOCKEDONMLB to get $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? Gametime.
All right, it's time for a rapid fire round of these free agent signings, some trades here from our everydayers. So let me start with AQ, Mike, and then I'll get your reaction.
Okay.
I like your thinking on getting impact players, John. Thank you. I just don't think that that's the route Perry will go again. Fair. They will be adding free agents, but likely from the bargain section. I would love to get players you suggested, but I really don't think the budget will be that high for 2025. My realistic thinking is another pitcher at a price range similar to Hendricks, like a Cole Irvin, who's from the OC, who may want to be near home so that he could be a decent match for both sides. Another player in the same class would be Trevor Williams, who also had some success but was injured, but could come for cheap with some incentives. On the positional player front, I see Kevin Newman, who could come in at a reasonable price to play second or short. That provides some depth in the middle infield, and he also went to high school in San Diego. I would love to see the impact free agents being signed, but Rendon, the fiasco around him has likely made Artie nervous on signing any big-time free agents to long-term deals. What about all these local guys, Mike? What do you say?
There's a lot of conversation about like, hey, there's no incentive to go to the Angels. And I would push back on that, but I do think that if you're going to sign people, it might be worth signing people who are local guys that have some sort of connection here. I think the names that are mentioned here, Cole Irvin, Trevor Williams, Kevin Newman, all of those guys are pretty quality guys. I don't think they're game changers, John. And so this is where you would really have to rely upon your stars, Logan O'Hoppe, Joe Adell, Nolan Shonowell, Zach Neto. Like those are the guys that they're going to have to be the ones that carry this team. And you also have to rely upon Mike Trout being Mike Trout. Perhaps these moves actually are brilliant moves, John, because you're trusting that Trout is actually going to lead this team and be healthy and that the young guys are going to rise up. And if that's the case, then you're just adding pieces around the superstars that you have, right?
Right. And he's going off the premise that I don't think Perry is going to get impact players. So I like that they had the premise and then they built out from there. So I think I love the thought that people are putting into these GM free agent picks and trades and things like that.
Yeah. James Russell Barton said, personally, I think the Halos should sign the following: Snell, Minaya, and Kim, and then corresponding moves. Taylor Ward being traded for a third or fourth starter, like we got Soler, and then Rengifo trade for a third or fourth starter because we've got Kim. And he also said he wouldn't be mad if they signed Bregman to play third and protect Trout in the lineup. And he thinks maybe 5 years, 125 with an opt-out after 2025. I don't know if you're going to get him for 5 years, John. What do you think?
Well, I think that when you talk about what incentive is there to sign with the Angels, Mike, I think part of the incentive is those opt-outs. And so if you give people a chance to say no to continuing on with you and finding something better in the following year, I think that's some incentive to come to the Angels and say, hey, look, we need you to be really good this season. We'd love to have you. And if it's not going well, then you have the eject button, right? You have that opt-out. I do like his picks of Snell, Minaya, and Kim. I don't know if it's Haesong or Ha-Song, but Minaya, I really wanted to sign Sean Minaya, but he's got the qualifying offer attached to him. So that's my only hesitation there. But again, going back to the opt-outs, I think that it's a reasonable way for the Angels to incentivize coming to Anaheim. And if you stick around, then you end up $125 million richer. So you can't complain about that either.
Yeah. Jay Harris on YouTube said, my free agent budget caps at $210 million, which will actually be about $200 million after a Ward trade. Everybody's trading Ward. They would sign Shane Bieber, AJ Minter, Haesong Kim, Harrison Bader, Anthony Desclafani, thank you. Ryan Stanek and Travis d'Arnaud. So some similarities to my signings and my similarities to your signings from your GM show.
Yeah, one thing about Shane Bieber is that he's going to be back about halfway through the season, so that's something to keep in mind. But it looks like Jay Harris addressed that with some of the other starting pitchers there. Desclafani is an interesting one just because he's had such a decent career. I think it's somebody to kind of backfill. It feels like a Hendricks thing to me, where you just have that guy on the roster just to have him. And then, Haesong Kim. I'm really excited to see where he lands in free agency. How about GPH55 said, well done, John. Hey, let's go. The Snell pick was perfect. I love your reasoning for Travis d'Arnaud. I still believe this bullpen needs help, so I would give AJ Minter 2 million, 16 or 2 years, 16 million, and Tommy Kahnle, 2 years, 13 million. Hey, you had Kahnle. With Stevenson coming back, these three can help lock down the game, save Ben Joyce in the event he's going through a bad stretch. Your Kim pick was perfect as well. And as much as I'd like to keep Adele, I would trade him for some farm pieces and then sign Harrison Bader, 1 year, $8 million for his speed and defense to platoon with Mickey Moniak. Mike, how do you feel about that?
I don't know. I think filling the bullpen is good.
Yeah,
but I do think that there needs to be some bats in this lineup, maybe some infielders. I love the philosophy. Hey, I want to really help the bullpen be strong. I'm going to lean more towards pitching probably and some bats in the infield. Glenn Thomas said he's going to spend $52 million on a 4-year contract with Carlos Estevez. He thinks he's a proven leader and be great for the young guys. Would you bring him back for that much?
Whew, that's a lot of money, 12 to 14 million a year. Yeah. He is a great leader in the clubhouse. I just worry about giving that kind of longevity to a closer who has had 2 good years, right? He was great with us last year. He was great with us this year and also with the Phillies in the regular season. And he is a great leader in the clubhouse. I would feel hesitant to give him a contract that long because again, these guys are so up and down in terms of bullpen pieces. Mike, let's get to James Pack, who we saw our bowling buddy. 3 picks would be 3 guys under 30 that might be gambles, but would much more realistically land on the Angels than a Soto or Garrett Cole or something. He said, I think these 3 guys would have upsides with 4 to 5 year contracts that they would fit into our team's 2-year competitive window. Walker Buehler, Shane Bieber, Ha-Sung Kim. Those are the 3 names. He says Buehler looks more like himself after surgery. Bieber may need 2 years, but he is under 30. And Ha-Sung Kim would instantly be a defensive upgrade that can play any infield position, would become a fan favorite like in San Diego. What do you say, Mike?
I love that James and our everydayers have thought logically and reasonably about, I mean, like it's not that hard, right? If you have some finances and you have a plan and you have some strategy, it's not that hard.
Right.
And this is the type of stuff where it's like you're not blowing the bank for these players, but it actually would be really beneficial for the Halos. I mean, if they had Walker Buehler, Shane Bieber, and Ha-Sung Kim, this would be a pretty good team and a pretty good starting rotation. I know that there's some injuries that they'd have to worry about with Bieber and him coming back. And then will Buehler be the guy that he was in the World Series? Lots of questions, but our everydayers, I think, crushed it, John, because they stayed within the realm of boundaries and what Artie would do. And so, Perry, we know you watch. Pay attention because our everydayers are not dumb. They're pretty smart, right?
Yeah, and for Perry, he's just got to be the one to convince these guys to come to Anaheim for 2025.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, you can check out Locked On MLB. Sully, our friend Sully, is a baseball guru. He's going to bring a blend of humor and baseball fun. He's going to keep you updated on every rumor and every story throughout the offseason for all of baseball. And you can find his show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to today's show. Get in the comment section on YouTube and interact with us there. Mike, what do we have on deck for Tuesday's show?
Well, we got news that Zach Neto was still hurt and had surgery, so that means that he is going to be postponed in his start for the season. He's not actually going to be ready for the start of 2025. So how's that going to impact the roster? And I read an article that said we should be mad that he waited. So we're going to actually address that too tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that conversation. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday.
How could you be mad at Zach Neto?
You can't be mad at Zach Neto.
How could anyone not like him?
He's a wonderful boy.